And I think that's why, to finish where this question started, that's why we need a new debate. But there's been some people who have not been prepared to admit that the standalone competition rules everything, independent state schools wasn't the best change that we've ever had in our system.
Thanks, Estelle. Let me bring Sonia in, because you've been talking, obviously, Sonia, about equity and social mobility. Though social mobility has been a failure in the past 20 or 30 years, we're just not seeing that social mobility. How might partnerships, if they were properly set up with some proper...
You join us now from the Foundation for Education Development's first ever education summit. It's quite a remarkable moment. Amazing lineup of people. You've got Professor Steve Humby here, Sonia Blandford. Just incredible. It's well worth £40 if you really want to catch up in a conversation on education and what people are doing to seize this moment. Really well worth checking us out. We'll cut back to it now. This is a restream from live from the Cardboard Cathedral that we built for the hashtag Coventry 21 Art Festival that we just ran in Coventry with a school community, Cash Primary there in Coventry, twinned with a school in Dorset, Prince of Wales School, and with other schools across the country logging in, Parklands Primary, Chris Dyson up there, and it's just been wonderful. But we'll cut back to the show now.
So we're looking at what talent there is in every school, what talent there is in every classroom, what talent there is in every individual. And if we look at that in the way in which we look at aspiration, the I can of every child, then the access to education, making sure that every child has a similar education, but obviously determined by need. There is that self-evident truth that you need to look at needs. So you have aspiration, I can, you have access, I do, they're all involved in education, and then you have attainment, which is I have, which is that real sense of personal attainment. It's not just because a tick box you filled in the correct answer at a given time. You've actually committed yourself as a learner, and that's where the pupils are. And that way you get to achievement, which is I am, and you get true social mobility, because it's that self-belief in learning. So we talked about earlier about the learner being the centre of professional practice, and that is where we need to get social mobility. We need to be thinking about social mobility as a term which is about generating a sense of learning in every young person, in every child.
Okay, Les and Nick, can I bring you two in? We're talking here about a partnership approach with the accountability, instead of about being an individual school, about things that recognise talent at child level, at school level, and at partnership level. Any thoughts from you two about what that might look like? Would you go for some kind of new approach to accountability and partnership, or do you think the answer lies elsewhere?
I've often said that that's what the academy that Tim was referring to, what we call the hard marked governance model, where schools almost give up their autonomy to be part of our organisation. The frustrating thing about being a director of education in around 2000.
I must admit, the one thing I've really was looking forward to and very excited about was hearing from Professor Mick Waters. We heard from him earlier. We didn't manage to get the system up on time, actually. But not to worry. I mean, Professor Waters, he was due to speak at our event yesterday, but sadly didn't get that together in the end. And obviously he's been very busy with this. But people like Mick Waters, and what's great about this event is how it's actually bringing so many, what's going on there? It's bringing so many fantastic educators together and people who are really keen to shape the whole curriculum, the whole conversation about education, how we might educate our children. And we have a hashtag here at STEAMco, hashtag that 80%. We've got to focus on that 80% that we've got in common. And that's what these amazing people are doing today. Fantastic event. Hats off to the Foundation for Education Development. Hats off to Shane Mann and his team at Schools Week. We've had our ups and downs with them as the winds change, but it's fantastic to see everybody coming together around the most important conversation that we could be having in this country at this time. And that's about our education, our children, our communities, and all our futures. As Sir Ken Robinson would have said, he was professor just down the road from where we are now in Coventry. He was at Warwick University for many years. Funny enough, my dad saw him speak there in the 90s. I said to my dad in 2000, whenever it was, "Oh, I've seen his TED talk." He said, "Oh, Ken Robinson, yeah, I saw him back in 93 at Warwick University when my dad was helping to roll out Sure Start." And funnily enough, it was interesting to hear, I think, oh, Mick, cut back to Mick.
And effectiveness. And nobody would deny that the accountability regime isn't rigorous, but whether it's effective is what we really need to question. And the casualties of a lot of the accountability regime have been that group of youngsters that Tim and Sonia have both talked about. They're the detritus in the system if we're not careful, because they don't count for our results. They're moved around, they're off-rolled, they're pushed about in all sorts of ways. And I'm not really, well, Ofsted's got its challenges. That's poor Ofsted. It can never get it right. It's been trying now for so long. It has had more frameworks than any other organisation that I know about. And someday it will realise that the time when it's most effective is while it's working on the pilot arrangements for a new framework. Because during that period, the schools that are taking part are volunteers. They're usually super-duper schools, so-called something quality, and they take part with HMI on devising the new framework to make it work. And ripples go through the system about what might be on the agenda, and schools are generally very positive about where it's going. It only goes wrong when they start inspecting and producing reports that give examples of minute detail of evidence that other schools then think they've got to copy or cease doing. And if they could only see themselves as an ongoing action research organisation that was trying to influence the quality of schools, trying to influence the quality of outcomes for youngsters, trying to influence the quality of experience for the good, as opposed to this summative judgment, I think we would see a very, very different approach, regardless of whether we're an individual or corporate groups. I think there's something about the outlook you've got to self-direction. And schools should be influence their accountability regime, not just waiting to see where they're going to do what.
So can we move to this theme? Many of you have touched upon it. Estelle, you talked earlier about some dialogue between the politicians and policymakers and the profession. Les, you talked about some kind of consensus as how to develop a curriculum. And Nick, you talked about not having leadership which is like managerial, but where there's genuine open leadership. Can we talk about how we would develop the new policies for the future? Not so much what, we talk about inclusivity, we talk about the new approach to accountability, new approach to partnership, but is the how? What would that mean for how politicians would operate, how MAT CEOs would operate, how head teachers would operate? What would be the how rather than just the what?
Well, I'll dive in. Nick and I are wrestling with this because we're writing a book together exactly on this topic. And we're interviewing important people as we're doing this book. And I reckon that the how is fascinating. I would either strengthen the select committee and ask the Secretary of State to consult the select committee, and then in strengthening the select committee, bring in the voices of everybody. There used to be standing advisory council, which was called from time to time and produced major reports. I personally think there should be the Standing National Education Advisory Council, which in short reads SNEAK, which I think would be very, very appropriate for an education development. So I'd have one of them, and I'd have everybody on it in a representative way for 4 years. And I'd say every year it would have to consider the report of Ofsted. Every year it would have to receive a report from the Secretary of State on what they had done. Because one of the things we haven't talked about is that the DFE aren't the most brilliant management system in the world, and if you therefore have to think of structure. I don't want to be preoccupied with it. But for my money, there needs to be some sort of standing advisory council that's there as of right, doesn't become the old lags, isn't a kind of special interest group of mates that you've called together, because that's the danger, and certainly isn't anecdotally driven by political advisors. Forgive me for saying that, Estelle. But I would want something like that so that people had a long-term view rather than always just waiting to grab something that is a symbol. I mean, the latest one that's a symbol is the National Institute for Teaching, which was announced about a fortnight ago. I mean, we just don't need one. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, and it's an attempt at kind of getting an obvious legacy.
Estelle, what's your take on how we should develop the right policy?
I think Tim might be right, but I think from the politician's point of view, perhaps, I think there's a step before that, because I think this is a big thing. I think this is a big change. It's as big as the 88 Act. Or maybe, unless we give an indication that it's as big as the 88 Act, nothing will happen. So this is what I do prior, Tim, to going into that kind of structure, which I think would work well. If I was Shadow Secretary of State for Education, or if it was Secretary of State for Education, I would make a Ruskin-type speech. And I'd look back and I'd say, look, we're still governed by the main tenets of the 88 Act. And I'd describe what I
Do you think Gavin Williamson honestly understands what you're talking about, Estelle? Bless him. So I don't mean to be disrespectful to our education minister, but I don't think I'm alone, sorry.
Kids get a better deal now than they did in 1987, because that's my view. So I'd try and get that national, that speech, bringing together, this is what it's given us. Then I'd be really clear and say, it's run its course. It's run its course. For the last 10 years, fiddling with it's not delivered us what it wants. And that's what we're doing. That's the only lever politicians are clutching at, is fiddling. And then I was having looked back and said, let's pocket the benefits, but let's be brave enough to say we need something. I would say to the nation, what's the next phase? And Sonia, this is where you could play on equity and the third, I love that phrase, you know, which third is it left behind? All that. And I'd just let it roll a bit. I'd try and be as good a listener as I would be a talker. But at the same time, I really would have the next stage, as Tim described, absolutely as much as possible set up and ready to run. But I think we need this almost free talk. You know, when you think you've got an idea, you get round a glass of wine with a few friends, and you need that glass of wine and that non-agendaed meeting in order to say, yeah, that's it, we're up for it. We know what we're doing now. And I think a politician could do that. I think they could, you know, look back what we gained, and they could start to sow the seeds for a big change. Otherwise, the danger is that those of us who are interested in education think we've started a big thing, but all the other partners who are not as interested in it as us don't know, so they don't become involved in it. And I want to make this a real sign of a big change. I think it's a glorious opportunity for a politician at the moment. And I'm pretty cross that I've not managed to persuade anyone to take it on, but there you go.
Nick, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll just come in. I agree with Estelle there, and I agree with Tim. I think they do follow each other.
Yeah.
It would just reflect that Tim's SNEAK, whatever it stood for, Standing National Educational Advisory Council, could be reconfigured to be seance, which is a lot of voices talking in the dark. And what's really, really important, I think, is that if we are going to have this conversation, it needs to be broader than simply schools. But within the school system, I think we've got to really focus on those that are new teachers, new head teachers, new people in places they haven't been before, and tell them that the world they're entering needs to be different from the one they're experiencing, and they have a chance to change it. And we've got to really work on building the outlooks of people who are new to things and changing what they get through themselves. That thing that Les was talking about, self-direction, self-belief coming through that. And I'd get going in Key Stage 3, where so many of the children Sonia talked about suddenly realise they're on a track in a different direction from a lot of others, and say to youngsters, what do you want in Key Stage 3? I know from a lot of experience over many years that the more you get people thinking they have a view on the future that they're planning, the better the future that they plan is. And I think we've got to get out of this habit of everybody sitting around waiting to see what the document says.
Such brilliant insight. Brilliant insight. Professor Mick Waters there, Wolverhampton, brilliant. But just in case if you don't know, Mick Waters there, he just helped restructure the Welsh curriculum around creativity, voice of students, communities, just brilliant work.
Going forward, whatever the discussion, whatever the debate, that third that we failed need to be part of the story, part of the journey. They need to participate. They don't need to be excluded. And there's a word I use quite a lot when I write, which is mutuality. And we need to value everybody, and therefore we should have this feeling of mutuality where we understand where people are coming from is different, but we need to have that mutuality that's going to be able to support everyone, irrespective of their background or their challenge or their need.
Thanks, Les.
Yeah, I think if I quickly say how not to do it, at the moment, all initiatives seem to come from a small cabal of people who know each other very well, who usually come from a particular aspect of education, and therefore give advice which is followed by secretaries of state and ministers. So I agree with everyone, actually, as I always do, that we need to have the voice of the child, we need to have the voice of the teacher, the voice of the school leader, the voice of the locality. We need all voices raised up, first of all. How you would do that, I think we need that preliminary work before we start talking. I think we need to have a step before we decide what the conversation is. We need to step to decide how we can have the conversation. And the last point I would like to make is, I think it'd be useful to look at all the initiatives in the last 10, 20 years. And I know if Tim and Mick, in your conversations with the great and the very, very good, just to ask the question, where did these, it's like the source of the Nile. Where did this initiative come from? Did it come from a school? Did it come from a local politician? Did it come from where did it come from? And how did it get into power? And how did we then implement it? And I've seen so many subcommittees being created in the last 10 years, which are self-agreeing consensuses.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, Les. Can I just ask you, can I have 1 minute from each of you in the final few minutes that we've got, just to say the most important thing we need to do now? Who would like to go first?
I think just want to get on with it. And the danger is that we become very good at talking about it and we don't get on with it. And sometimes you need an
JFDI.
You know, the pandemic is a point in time where lots of people are prepared to think fresh thoughts, and we know we've not got everything right. So we need to get on with it. It's a really important question, Steve, that probably needs more than a minute, because when I say that, the next thing really is, well, what do we do to get on with it? So we all know each other quite well, to be honest. We're all agree with some things that the others say, but not others. And somehow, the next thing really is, well, what do we do to get on with it? How do we take what I think is some unity amongst us into groups of people who actually don't agree with us? Because unless we're brave enough to say the consequences of not making these changes are too great, let's get out of our comfort zone and let's take on the challenges of those who disagree with us on the fundamental need for this radical reform, we won't be getting on with it, and I think we need to get on with it.
The 44 Act was designed at the time of Dunkirk. It wasn't designed at the end of the war, it was designed at the early stages of the war. The 88 Act, I still believe, came after a major social and economic upheaval. We're going through a major upheaval at the moment. It is more than simply a disease, isn't it? It's a significant shift in everything we do. I think we've got to start now. We can't wait for a year's time. We must start now. And I think, as I agree with Estelle, let's talk to people that don't agree with us. Let's talk to people that we don't agree with.
Well, I think it's been quite illuminating for me. I've enjoyed it actually very much. I just think that there is more consensus than people realise in terms of what we want for our young people. There is a broadly held view about what's important and what we should do for everybody. Too much conversation about education that comes across the media is soundbite politics, really, whoever starts it, and not enough about the sorts of things we've been talking about today. And somehow we've got to get past that. Just before this pandemic, there was plenty in the media about the health service and what was wrong with it. That's faded now completely. And the conversation is about how we need to move on and build the sort of health service we're proud of to take us forward. And we need the same sort of conversation about our schooling system and what we can do for all of our youngsters as we face a future that for them is full of opportunity as well as challenge.
Thanks, Mick. Sonia?
Thanks. So I would say I agree with that, with what's been said. We need to get on with it, but we need to ensure that the net is far and wide. We need to include as many different people with their different views, their different experiences. If we're going to take everybody's talents, we need to respect everybody and value everybody. We need to have that mutuality that I talked about, but we also need to have a change, I think, that we're all alluding to the leadership of the few that decide what's going to happen to the rest of us. And I think that the sooner that we continue that debate, and count me in, Estelle, if you want to have that debate as far and wide, but let's also include parents and carers from different backgrounds, not just the same old.
Thanks, Sonia. Tim?
Slightly off the point, because I agree with all of that, so let's not repeat it. I think there is an opportunity, a kind of, it's like Vesuvius, and there's a rusty old bus that is waiting. Because I agree with all of that, so let's not, the driver is saying, look, I get a bit of petrol here, and that's a terrible thing to say, get an electric vehicle, and we can all escape Vesuvius. And I think that one of the neglected developments during the pandemic is the Oak Academy, and some of you are going to be horrified. It's a kind of good in parts and not so good in other parts. But what it represents is an opportunity the government could take tomorrow and be remembered forever, Mr. Williamson. If you created an open school that was equivalent to the Open University. The Open University was opposed by every university in this country when it was formed, and yet the tutors to the Open University were in the constituent existing universities, and as a result transformed their teaching, their use of materials, and the quality. I know that's where I went from Oxfordshire to a university, and I could see the impact that the Open University had. So if all our kids, particularly the third we're talking about, had belonged to their home school and an open school that curated the best experiences and opportunities that were available online or in reality in a local area, and each of those home schools had an open school tutor within them, we could transform the opportunities that so many young people in their adolescent years slip through the net at the moment. They wouldn't if we transformed the possibilities in every school by creating an open school that worked with it.
Well, thanks, Tim. A bombshell at the end to radically change things. Let me just sum up what I think I've heard there. We are saying that the Reform Act of 1988 did improve things in lots of ways. It's time now for a change. We need to look at partnership working and accountability and be more inclusive in how we operate, looking at groups of schools rather than the individual school as the measure of accountability. We need to look at how we now move forward, not just the what, but the how. And the how has to be genuinely inclusive, listening to the voice of young people, listening to the voice of parents and carers, listening to the voice of the profession, led by the politicians. But also we're saying, the key point for Mick here is, let's talk about the people who are going to be shaping the future, not the ones who are about to leave. The new people, the new teachers, the new head teachers, the ones who are going to be stepping up to it, in particular to engage them in that dialogue. Can I just say it's been a real pleasure and privilege to talk with you today. I think we've got the basis of an ongoing discussion to really improve things in our education system. And a big thank you to you.
Well, you join us live and direct here from the Federation or the Foundation for Education Development, National Education Summit, an absolutely fantastic day. I mean, it's just incredible. I've been busy all weekend with the #Coventry 21 Festival, which you can see behind me here. cardboard cathedral built here in Coventry to inspire our young people, not just to aim high, but higher than high. We had a fantastic event yesterday where let's just get rid of that. Fantastic day yesterday where we had community performances, talks, workshops. It's just been a remarkable weekend. We took the Coventry Cathedral as our inspiration, quite frankly. The cathedral, which was bombed heavily during the war, as everybody will be very aware, and which rose from the ashes with the incarnation of a brand new cathedral. This is Penny, what's her name, Habiger or something? Fantastic activist on the area of on diversity, on inclusion, and a whole range of powerful agenda items which we all need to consider. Who she got up here? Rajek Naik and us at Penny Rabinger. So it's good to see a very wide range of people involved. I question the broader inclusion of broader community members, parents, teachers should be working together. And I'm not seeing the broader community of parents involved, but obviously this is a bit more of a policy wonk type event. So they don't want ordinary people in there who don't understand the big issues. Maybe, I don't know, maybe their views aren't welcome. So we're delighted to restream this though. I did message Shane Mann, who is the CEO of a company called LSECT, who publish Schools Week, FE Week, who run the Festival of Education in Wellington College, where we were a few years ago. I have to pull that video up, actually. That was a fun time. And yeah, I think I will, because Sir Ken Robinson spoke at that. And Sir Ken Robinson, I think it's What If Week or something, which his daughter Kate is running this week. Let's see if I can find that. That might be fun, mightn't it? We could drop that in now. Let's have a look. What was it? I can't remember what the video was called, actually. I'll think about that. It'll come back to me. Did I call it EdFest or something like that? Let's have a look. I have all these little 6-digit codes for all our projects, and I just can't remember what that one was. It was FE, Festival of Education, maybe. Let's have a look. SCOFE. Oh well, it's not making for the most riveting television, is it? An internet stream. I'll dig that out in a minute. But no, it's all about inclusion, and this event looks fantastic. I mean, I've got a very broad range of people there. You've seen Tim Brighouse, Professor Mick Waters, who I think have advised the Labour Party in the past. It's also important to note, it was a lovely quote actually, which came out from somebody there saying that Tony Blair was the first ever Prime Minister. Think about that. Tony Blair was the first ever Prime Minister to send his children to a state school. Wow, that's a comment, isn't it? Fantastic. I mean, what an insight. Tony Blair gets a lot of stick, probably just for being Labour, if nothing else, but also obviously that war, which many people marched against, and I did. But any Prime Minister who stands up on a ticket of education, for me, is heading in the right direction. Sure Start was one of his initiatives, I believe. My father helped roll Sure Start out across Shropshire, and saw Ken Robinson speak at University of Warwick back in the 90s, as I said earlier. So really, this is an important event. We are not bootlegging this. We're not pirating this. We're not restreaming this to in any way cheat this organisation, LSECT, and the money they're trying to make from this. Obviously, they're charging £40 a ticket. I don't know quite why, because I don't imagine that the speakers are being paid, and I don't know if the Education Foundation's trying to raise funds on the back of this, because obviously the technology is as good as free. They're using a thing called Hopin, which is a great conferencing platform, and they're using StreamYard as well on that. We're using a bit of StreamYard. We've got tech that they couldn't probably dream of, because they're all going back to school next week, and we're not going back. We're working with schools that want to leap forward. Not go back, but leap forward. And in the next few days, we're going to share some of the content from our weekend, our hashtag Evolve21 conference yesterday, which we ran with Professor Stephen Heppel and Professor Siddhartha Mitra. We're going to show some of the performances of the children there at the school. And we're going to show that we need to do this together. I did actually have a casual chat with somebody a couple of weeks ago, actually, who's one of the committee members of the Foundation for Education Development, as if to maybe we could collaborate, maybe they could have mentioned our event yesterday and we could mention their event this week. And I was told that I'm too political, which I find quite ironic, because I try not to be party political, but process and policy political. We don't align with any particular party. In fact, Saturday we actually had a speech at our conference, at our Coventry 21 event, from Caroline Dinenage. She's the Digital and Culture Minister for the Department of Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. 4 years ago, Matt Hancock spoke at an event that we had in Ironbridge, and I'm going to pull that up actually, because I'm not having anybody say that I'm political. I'm just not having that at all, because that's a convenient way of excluding people from a conversation. So let me see if I can find that film. Might have to put my glasses on for this. It's all a bit small. I forgot to turn the lights on, and I haven't actually got the audio working properly yet because I haven't had time to get it up. Okay, that should have worked. Why didn't that work? Oh, because I've got to click browse. Okay, it's a brand new system and it is full on, but it's a little bit of a head scramble to say the least. But I did actually reach out to Shane Mann to see if he wanted any collaborations, opportunities, if he wanted to help, but it wasn't going to happen this time. That's fair enough. Oh, there's a video there from Jane Bonham Carter. She's a Lib Dem, so she was the Lib Dem's cultural commentator. So she did a film for us as well. Maybe we'll show that in a minute. Do I need to prove to people that we're inclusive? I don't know. Well, let's have a look. I'm going to pull this video in now, and this is fantastic. We love BBC Local Radio here at Steamco. We absolutely love them, and BBC Local Radio do a really good job of celebrating people who make a difference. They've got a Make a Difference project thing going on, which is obviously quite convenient and works quite well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this. I need to just program this onto the main screen. Nothing happens here. This is not Zoom. This is not click a button to share a screen. This is hardcore. I can tell you we are not messing about today. So I'm going to pop it in there. So I need to click that. You have no idea how hard this is, honestly. Give me a little bit of a break. So that should put that up. That's good. Well, that's a start, isn't it? A bit worried why that's that aspect ratio 4:3. That's squeezed in a little bit there. Well, maybe it'll work. So let's hear from Matt Hancock and what we did at Steamco did in Shropshire, my county town, my home county a few years ago.
Come here today and they're doing all sorts of activities that they're probably
on BBC Radio Shropshire. If you heard the sound of a rocket being launched in Coalbrookdale yesterday, don't worry. It was an event aimed at getting 100 young people inspired in science and technology. Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust has been working with Steamco to put on a day of workshops, talks and creative stuff for children, their parents and teachers.
My name is Maureen McGregor and I'm the manager of lifelong learning at the Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust.
What's happening today?
We're having an event today. We're saying you've got to be creative, and so they've come here today and they're doing all sorts of activities that they've probably never done before, and we're just saying have a go.
So I'm Nick Corston and my job title is Just a Dad. I'm just a dad who thought, what can I do to try and inspire tomorrow's children?
And what are you doing, Nick?
We basically provide inspiration and resources to power communities to inspire their children with creativity.
Robotics, coding, programming, all sorts of things like that. And children need to learn these things now, be comfortable with them, and
I think one
be
of the most
able.
amazing things that just shows how art connects, quite literally, was Monday morning. I got a call from Matt Hancock's office saying Matt's got 10 minutes in his diary, pop down, let's make a video. And we did that. And on the wall behind him was a Damien Hirst painting, a spin painting of the Queen. And today we've had children spin painting on paper plates with pictures of the Queen, inspired by the work of Damien Hirst, inspired by a picture on the wall of the Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Minister, Matt Hancock. So thank you, Matt.
I hope you really think about those STEAM skills, bringing technology and arts together.
I think one of the most amazing things that just shows how art connects, quite literally, was Monday morning. I got a call from Matt Hancock's office saying Matt's got 10 minutes in his diary, pop down, let's make a video. And we did that. And on the wall behind him was a Damien Hirst painting, a spin painting of the Queen. And today we've had children spin painting on paper plates with pictures of the Queen, inspired by the work of Damien Hirst, inspired by a picture on the wall of the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Minister, Matt Hancock. So thank you, Matt.
I hope you really
We're all born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. That was Pablo Picasso. And I think we've got to help our kids, all our kids, aim high in life. Not just high, but higher than high. We've got to help our kids find their passion, their art. So I'm Nick Corston. I'm just a dad. I'm co-founder of SteamCo. One day maybe I'll be the CEO, I don't know. So SteamCo is a non-profit community enterprise that helps connect our kids with their art and our communities with their schools by running creativity days. And we want to get the whole community involved. We want people who've had kids, not had kids, got kids, whatever, to come and work with us to help us run these days.
It's magic! It's magical!
What inspired me? Well, I saw a talk by Sir Ken Robinson. I read half a book called What's the Point of School? On what we should be teaching our kids. And I went to Camp Festival, which is really a Glastonbury for kids. And I thought, I want this in my kids' school. I've got a lovely little film my dad gave me of me when I was 1 and him with my first ever train set. And I show that to kids in schools all over the country. And how my dad gave me the greatest gift. He gave me my art. Because art is what we call it when what we do might connect us to somebody else. So art could be painting, it could be photography, it could be cooking, it could be coding, it could be dancing, it could be design, it could be DJing, it could be robots, it could be rockets. The fun, the excitement that we have making and firing rockets in schools is to be seen, to be believed.
This is the best day of my life.
This truck contains everything you need to run a creativity festival in a primary school. 30 coding kits with the BBC Microbit. We've got rocket making kits. We do cardboard challenge. We can do the egg drop. We've got a t-shirt printing machine so we can print I Love Art t-shirts. So the kids design their own logo, take a selfie. We've had thousands of posters of those done. That's with JR, French street artist JR. So we've got communities all over the country designing I Love Art logos, taking photos, and we sent them off to JR, and he's printed 1,000 of these off for us, which we fly posting all over the country. So in lockdown, we got an Arts Council grant and we built a green screen TV studio. We've been live streaming events all summer. We did a 3-day Glastonbury event where we built a half-sized pyramid stage from cardboard and code and ran 3-day events. We had Martin and Gary Kemp. We had Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols on stage alongside community artists, dads and their kids. And we had a young lad from Leeds called Lenny who played his piano on stage, all virtual. And that's what we want to do. Lockdown's not going to lift in a hurry. And we're running festivals from a spare bedroom here in Paddington. But we need people involved. We want people to collaborate for creativity.
For me, collaboration is everything.
Elton John gave me the greatest gift. Actually, he made a film, I don't know if you saw it, with John Lewis, where basically he tells the story of how he was given a piano as a kid and worked hard and made literally $1 million. I saw that film, ripped it off, put our own subtitles on it, and Elton John retweeted it. It had 50,000 views in an hour, and I went on a 2-week UK tour from Cornwall all the way to Carlisle, showing that film, showing my train set film, talking to kids about art and creativity, letting off rockets, and inspiring schools across the country in our 12 days of Creative Christmas tour.
You've inspired one little boy in particular, a very quiet boy, and as that rocket shot into the air, we heard the words blast off come out of his mouth.
Innovation, technology, and dreams rocketing up to the sky.
The state education system, we have a lot of people feel it's been narrowed and narrowed and narrowed, focusing on teaching and testing of highly academic subjects, which are important, which are right for some kids, but it's not for everybody. And some kids come out of the education system literally broken. 9 out of 10 schools in Britain have reported cutting the arts in some way or another, which is a real tragedy. And we're going to lose that cutting edge creativity that made Britain so famous. Creativity is Great Britain after all. The ideal future for me would be a whole load of these trucks on the road with passionate, enthusiastic, committed, creative people, helping connect kids with their art and communities with their schools all the way across the UK. As Albert Einstein said, imagination can take us anywhere.
I would like to have STEAM day in my class.